We are live. Good morning or good afternoon, as the case may be, everybody. Melissa Corrigan, kick us off. Tell us what you're doing.
Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be live in DC here. Earlier today, I was on the National Mall covering some of the actions that our congressmen have been, some of the bills they've been introducing late last night, some bills that are going to be extremely harmful to the youth of DC. And I wanted to head over here. For those of you who don't know, I am a Navy veteran, and right here in front of Union Station. So there's Union Station behind me. And right here, there is a 24/7 veterans rally point set up in this front tent here. There's a couple of other organizations represented back behind them. So I'd like to go over and just say hi to those vets. And then I'm going to be doing a little light reading of the new papers. So,
Nice.
so we're going to head over. This tent is manned 24/7 by veterans, and they are here to talk to anyone and everyone that's interested coming out of Union Station. Everyone say hello to Banner and Backbone. Hello, hello. So they are doing the good work of educating and informing. I've already seen a couple people come up and just ask what they're about, and they have really good, solid conversations with people and explain and break down how, particularly, what this regime is doing it is harmful to the veteran community and the military community specifically.
That's amazing, Melissa. So I know you were commenting right before we went live that it's a little bit dead out there today. So it's Constitution Day. It's a Wednesday in September in DC. It's not
Right.
prime tourist season necessarily, but it should be a little bit busier than what you're seeing. Isn't that right?
Yes, the entire city is very eerily quiet. The National Mall, especially, was just deathly quiet over there, which is highly unusual during any season. The mall usually has a little more activity going on than that. If you've never been to DC, the National Mall is ringed by all of the Smithsonian museums. So it's a real tourist hub. You have people coming in and out of those museums, and to see it so quiet and dead, I like to say that cities are alive, cities are vibrant, cities make noise. And when you're in a city where it's this quiet, it's not a symptom of health, I would say.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that, the National Guard obviously is there, their mission there got extended by Trump, but there aren't that many National Guard folks, right? And
Correct.
it's more like the message has gone out that, like, don't come to the
Right.
Capitol. Like, don't
Exactly.
be here, you are not welcome.
Right.
And you're seeing that in action on the mall everywhere.
Yeah. Earlier today, I did see when we went over here for lunch, we went in Union Station, and there were four National Guardsmen posted up right by the door, and a woman came out and began filming them, and one of them turned away like this. And I do feel for these guys. A lot of them are young guys. We call them kids. They look like kids. They're out here. They don't want to be out here. You have sometimes civilians taking pictures of them, taking video of them, and saying mean things to them. And for me, I have a 20-year-old son. I think if my son went into the National Guard to help, because that's what this generation of kids has seen from the
Right.
National Guard, is helpers. They've seen them go clean up after hurricanes and after natural disasters. They weren't around for Rodney King to see the National Guard on
Right.
put against civilians like that. So these kids are young, and they went to a branch of the military that was more focused on helping.
Right.
And now, unfortunately, they're really targets in DC for disgruntled citizens. In a way, I do feel I feel sorry for the individual guardsmen who have to be posted up here with really no great concept of what the greater mission is, other than to intimidate by presence.
Right.
And I just can't imagine a 20-year-old, like I said, if my son was in being put in a position to just intimidate by presence would really mess with him.
Yeah, I think it's really important for everyone to remember that, the National Guard, these are people who usually live in the communities that they're serving, right?
Right.
They're folks who are often from, lower socioeconomic classes. They're, often people of color who are looking for an opportunity to get an education and to help in their communities because that is the usual purpose of the National Guard. It's,
Right.
folks who get called up during a natural disaster or, flooding or hurricane cleanup or something like that. To have them be in DC at, kind of like you said, intimidating through just their presence there is really not aligned with the mission that all of these kids signed up for.
Right.
And we call them kids. Of course, they have to be 18 or older to be a part of this, but they are predominantly young people, right? The National
Right.
Guard and lots of military service skews younger because people are signing up usually for the GI Bill benefits that come with national service. Um, it's got to be a real mind fuck to think that you're going to do something good to serve your country, to serve your community, and then be there and be unwanted and to feel unwanted from the citizenry that's there. Right?
Right.
It's hard on both sides. You can kind of understand where everybody's coming from.
Exactly. And I like the way the community has handled it. And again, one of the predominant things in all of the literature I've seen posted in coffee shops, and there's little resistance pamphlets everywhere, and you look on community boards, and there's lots of good guidance, and a lot of it definitely stresses nonviolence, and definitely don't mess with the National Guard. They didn't ask to be here. So
Right.
the community is presenting a united front of peace, um, which I think is obviously going to be the best way forward for, especially for Washingtonians.
Yeah. Yeah. And we, since we're kind of touching this topic, let's expand on it just a little bit and remind people that nonviolent protest is the thing that Banner and Backbone is advocating. Um, Violence gets us nothing. Violence actually plays into Trump's hands, the regime's hands. It allows
Right.
them to then escalate, and return violence, and actually do things like, pass the Insurrection Act, right? So, what we know is that when 3.5% of the population engages in nonviolent protest, those resistance movements always win.
Right.
Always.
And even the added layer of, we know those figures and we know those statistics, and then you look at the unique situation of having a reality television producer as a president, and you realize this is all a big reality show to him. And every time we flare up in violence, it gets played tenfold, and it plays right into the scripting and production of his reality television show. And so I myself don't want to be an unpaid actor in Donald Trump's reality television show. And so that is yet another compelling point to nonviolence, to not participate in the show that he wants to put on.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you had a chance yet to talk to any of the guards folk that you've seen around, or are you trying
No,
to
I
kind of give them their space?
I've tried to give them their space, and we were running in to get lunch real quick before this live, and when we came back out, I was gonna try to grab a couple of them, and they had moved on. They're just slowly patrolling and rotating, but the fact that I haven't seen another one to pick, I mean, they're very, very few and far between.
Right. Are they armed right now, Melissa?
Yes, and we did notice when, my son and I came through. Now, Congress is in session, so it's obviously very, busy and well protected around the Capitol building right now. But to my knowledge, and maybe I didn't notice, but I've visited DC a lot and been in the Capitol and done Capitol tours. And as we were rounding the Capitol building, they had several dogs out, and the Capitol police were armed with semi-automatic weapons, which was like a little jarring to
Yeah.
see. That was not, I feel like, usual. So that was a little bit jarring. Big, big presence around the Capitol building. But aside from that, no.
Yeah. This is a terrible thought, but my mind kind of instantly went to, I wonder what it would have been like if the Capitol Police had been armed with semi-automatic weapons on January 6th of 2021.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really interesting counterfactual to kind of think about. A little bit, a lot scary. Um, so I know that part of what you're doing there is it's Constitution Day today,
Yes.
and I want to talk in a minute about your new papers and make sure that people know about that. But what Dana and I just saw on Substack is there's apparently a protest. There are 50 people who marched 10 miles every day for the last 16 days from Philadelphia to the Capitol building. And they're bringing a copy of the Constitution. And their whole point is to remind Congress critters that they have taken an oath to the Constitution. I'm wondering, have you seen that
I
march of those
have
people?
I have not. I was tracking them early this morning on Instagram, I believe. And so I need to see an update to see if they are here, where they are in the city, and I'll definitely try and go track them down.
Nice. Yeah, I don't know all the details, but it looks like they're in DC and they're either at or close to the Capitol building now.
Oh man. Okay, I'll have to go back around the front of the building to see because I did see that, and that's incredible. And see, I'm glad somebody remembers that it's Constitution Day.
Right, right. Clearly they planned in advance, right? They
Yes.
planned it all out so that they would get there on Constitution Day with the
Right.
Constitution. Well, tell us about your new papers. I know this is a big project you've been working on. You're really passionate about it.
Yes.
It's important. Tell people what you're doing.
Okay. So I started doing a one-page pamphlet a la Thomas Paine and Common Sense. That pamphlet inspired me at like 13 years old, and I've always been a history nerd and a political nerd, and so when I was thinking about what I could possibly do to participate in resistance, having 6 kids and a busy life, and not able to go march in the streets like I used to, um, I started thinking about the power that our writing holds and what we can do with that. And so I thought back to our founding fathers and how many of them wrote these pamphlets and just distributed them throughout the colonies to address the concepts and ideas of democracy with people who maybe had come over fresh off the boat and all they knew was monarchy and all they knew uh, was to be a tightly governed people. And so I began writing the new papers. And so it's a one-page pamphlet, largely offline. I do have a little sort of backdoor way to get to it on my website with a password, but
Nice.
I keep it mostly print. I want to put it in people's hands. I want it to be a tangible object that people can pick up and read and reread and pass on. I scattered some around DC last night. Even I'll put them anywhere. I put them in the paper towel dispenser in a restroom of a nice restaurant last night. And 20 minutes later, I got a new subscriber, and I kind of wonder if it's not not
Yes.
related. Um, this one particularly, I titled it "A Return to Common Sense." Thomas
Mm,
Paine's most famous pamphlet was Common Sense,
yep.
and it was addressed to the inhabitants of America on 3 subjects. So I really mirrored that framework, and it is a return to common sense addressed to the inhabitants of the United States of America, because he wrote that before it was the United States, on the topics of liberty, empathy, and courage. And I used sort of the allegory of a torch, a light. And if every citizen of America has their own light of liberty, we're a brighter nation. We can see where we're going. We can
Yeah.
march into the future. If you restrict that light to a select few, you're a dark nation and people are operating in the dark. And that's not a healthy way for any nation to operate. And out of that, part of the cornerstone of getting that light of liberty to everyone is, as a people, insisting going forward that empathy be a foundational piece of our governance from now on. It's time for universal health care. It's time for a universal quality of life here that many other developed nations have already made empathy a cornerstone for their nations, and it
Right.
shows in how they take care of their citizens.
Yeah.
And taking those 2 pieces together, liberty and empathy, the third piece is courage. Do you have the courage to step out and demand this?
Yeah. Those are such great concepts, right? And I think empathy and courage in particular, because what we've seen recently in the news, with the assassination of Charlie Kirk,
Right.
is somebody who actively advocated against empathy, right? Somebody who said that empathy was a weakness, which is a talking point of the right wing machine that we're up against.
Right.
And courage is such an important point because, I think we keep waiting for somebody to come along and save us. And what we all need to realize is it's us. There's nobody else.
Right.
The person, whoever we think we're waiting for to come lead us out of this darkness,
We've
doesn't
seen too
exist.
many movies.
Yeah, right. We've seen too many movies about, the hero that rises. Well, the,
Right.
the heroes are us. And it's thousands and millions of small acts of courage like this, what you're doing by being there and by printing your pamphlet, by having the courage to, I think many people, myself included, the idea of like printing a piece of my writing and printing it up and handing it out to people directly, that's freaking scary, right? Like
It
that
is.
feels uncomfortable. um we've all been trained to hide behind screens
It
and
is.
pixels and aliases, and you're doing it kind of live in person, and that is the kind of courage that we need replicated, over and over and over again by, it doesn't have to be that exact thing, but the conversations. And you reminded me of the committees of correspondence, right? Like a big part of the history of this nation and the founding of this nation was those distributed networks of community where like-minded people in every community could get together in a committee of
Right.
correspondence and trade these newsletters and these writings back and forth. And it feels a little like we're doing that on Substack, but we need more in real life, kind of IRL stuff.
Yes. And with I mean, we have a huge nation. It's hard for everybody to get to the nation's capital. But even if you can get to your state capital, lots of organizations are establishing presences at state capitals around the nation. And also, people seem to forget that your congressman and senator work for you. They have open office hours. You can go
Right.
talk to them. You just call up and make an appointment. You go talk to them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, people need to definitely be more invested and personally active in reaching out to their congressmen, and they work for you. Go talk to them. And if you can't go in person to talk to them, pick up the phone. Fivecalls.org. I beat that into the ground. Fivecalls.org will give you your local rep's number and even scripts. So if you get nervous and your mind goes blank when they answer the phone, there's a script to read on dozens of topics. So, call them. Call them all the time. They
Yeah.
work for you. Make them work.
Yeah. Yeah, and the interesting thing is, I don't know if other people are experiencing this. So I'm living in a red state. I'm in the Indiana 3rd Congressional District, and Marlon Stutzman is my congressperson, and his office doesn't answer their phone anymore, right? It goes to voicemail.
Wow.
So you can't call and make an appointment. You can request an appointment and pray that they call you back. And they don't answer the phone any longer, or at least they haven't in the last couple of weeks. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
I'd be curious to hear if other people are having a similar experience where I think there's some Republican Congress critters out there who are realizing that they are deeply unpopular
Yes.
and deciding not to listen to the people. And so, we need some community ideas around how we start addressing that. And maybe it's protesting in person, maybe it's protesting in front of the offices. But
And a lot of
like,
times we do need those people out protesting, and we also need people emboldened to have those face-to-face conversations that are uncomfortable. That means, the aunt that you don't like talking to because she's always divisive with you, just approach those conversations from a place of, let me try to understand. Let me understand where you got that information. Let me understand where you got this line of thinking. And maybe we can hash out that part of what you received was propaganda. There's no facts behind that. Here are some facts to think about. And you're not going to necessarily change people's mind. But if you approach those conversations with dignity and respect, and like, hey, I just want you to have the facts. You can believe what you want to believe, but at least I want you to have the full facts to make that determination for yourself. Those are small acts of bravery. Anytime you overhear someone say something that's just absolutely false, just be like, hey, um, yeah, that's not necessarily the case. And those are the tiny acts of bravery that really change, uh, just cause a groundswell of change. And we have to get comfortable having those conversations and speaking up in the moment.
Yeah, you know what's given me courage is I went to my local Barnes and Noble and I bought a pocket copy of the Constitution of the United States. And so, for example, recently, the ICE deportations, right, and the conversation around due process. And what I've run up against is people who, are like, oh, well, they're not citizens, and so they don't deserve due process. And it's been really liberating to be able to be like, no, no, Amendment 5 of the Constitution right here starts with the words, no person shall be held to answer for capital or otherwise infamous crime. You know, no person, not
Yeah.
citizen,
No
no
person.
person.
Yeah.
That's anybody. They don't have to be here legally. It literally means that every person who is in the borders of the United States deserves due process, regardless of their citizenship status.
Right.
And like actually having the words of our founding document kind of at hand to be able to reference really does help move some of those conversations forward, right? Because
Right.
it's really easy then to be like, do you support the Constitution or no?
Right.
Come on. Like, come
Yeah.
on, bro. Like, either you're for this document or you're against it. Which one?
Right.
Yeah, it's I would encourage everyone, they're not too expensive. This was like 15 or 17 bucks. It's pretty, it's nicely bound, it's got the pretty gilt edges.
And it's
And
in
it's
print.
incredibly
And it's in print.
and it's in print, right? No one can take it away.
Right.
No one, like the Trump administration has done a couple times, can publish a copy of the Constitution and accidentally leave out some of the amendments, for
Correct.
example.
Right.
Here they all are printed up, plus, this one has the bonus Declaration of Independence. So you can remind people that, in the Declaration, we are all told that we have inalienable rights, life,
Right.
liberty, and the pursuit of happiness that almost come before all of the amendments, the Bill of Rights, and everything else, right? Like the
Right.
Declaration is a key founding document of our country. It counts.
Right. And we do still have these rights. Executive orders that he signs in a fucking marker don't mean that the laws have changed and he doesn't
Right.
change the Constitution. And he's trying to threaten people and scare people with these largely performative executive orders that are for the most part getting shredded in court, just taken apart. They are
Yeah.
not enforceable. And so you know, our courts are for the most part, bearing their burden in the checks and balances, probably more than their fair share of the burden, considering Congress didn't doing their part. So, you have justices and judges across the nation that are stepping up and doing the right thing and holding this administration to task. You'll see the headline when he writes some or signs some, because we know he's not writing them. When he signs some crazy executive order, you see those headlines. But then the headlines of the courts dismantling those and throwing them out and saying they're not enforceable, those are a lot quieter. So, one of the things that you can do if you're just at home, share the stories, amplify the stories of these judges holding this administration to account and knocking down these EOs left and right. The guy signs anything you put in front of him with a fucking Sharpie. That does
Right.
not make it law. It doesn't make it the new, anything. Like he signed an executive order on flag burning, and right here, a veteran burned a flag right here in front of Union Station,
Right.
and he was arrested and taken in and spent a few hours while they all searched desperately for something to charge him with because it's not against the law. The president can't just speak and make it so.
Yeah. Okay, everybody. I am grabbing a link to Barnes and Noble, the exact copy of my pocket Constitution. I'm putting it into the chat because a couple people have been asking. Um, I was wrong. It's $10. It's not even very expensive, right? Like there are
Yeah.
eggs that are more expensive than this right now.
Yes.
And a couple of folks were saying like a copy of the Bill of Rights too. I mean, it's in here. The Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. This is the full Constitution with all 27 amendments and the Declaration of Independence. It's literally the the entire operating instructions for our whole government are right here. And and the reason that Trump is pushing those executive orders, Melissa, you're exactly right. It's entirely performative. It's entirely about putting on a show. It is literally anti-constitutional. The reason they're getting struck down in court is because this is not the way that laws get enacted in this country. They get enacted by Congress, or they get enacted through an amendment to the Constitution itself.
Right.
So, what Trump is doing with EOs doesn't cut it, and it doesn't count. Um, yeah. So go grab one. Like they're not that expensive.
Absolutely. Have a
And
copy in your house.
yeah, and if you're, if you've got a little bit of extra money, I know that money is tight for everybody. Maybe grab a couple extra copies and hand them out to your family and friends. Like
Yes.
it's a nice gift. It's really pretty looking, and I can't honestly think of anything that's more important right now than making people come to terms with the fact that the Constitution is under attack in this country,
Right.
and it is literally the only thing preventing us from full on anarchy and authoritarianism and, just a fucking disaster, the likes of
Right.
which this country's never experienced.
And so every single citizen on these streets need to know exactly what their rights are.
Yeah.
And I've seen lots of videos where, these guys, these feds have acted um out of compliance, out of how they should be acting. And when people are standing around saying, you're violating his Fourth Amendment, you're violating his Fourth Amendment, you're violating, those cases do get thrown out. Those people do get out of whatever, jail they're put in because they were, in fact, and a whole lot of people are suing. A whole lot of people are suing this administration and even local jurisdictions because they're violating rights left and right. And you can't just rewrite those rights in real time and you're going to pay. Like you're going to pay.
Holy crap, Melissa, listen to this. So, Carrie just posted in the chat and says the ACLU has 10 packs of the Constitution for $17.87 today
That's,
only. You know why 1787? That's the
yeah,
year the Constitution was drafted by the framers in Philadelphia.
that's incredible.
That is amazing. I'm going to their website right now to grab that. Well, I'm looking for it and I don't see it right off the bat, but let me see if I can. Oh, it's in there. Let me go to their shop. I really want to grab this link and get it in the chat for everybody because I mean that's an incredible deal. That's
It
basically
is.
like a buck 70, buck
Right.
80 for each copy of it.
Stock up.
Oh, great! Awesome. Thank you for putting it in
Oh,
there.
thank you, Carrie.
Oh, and the first 100 orders get a free flag pen.
Oh,
That's pretty cool. You know what? I am broke as fuck right now. Seriously, like super crazy broke, but I'm going to go buy a 10 pack of the Constitution
yeah, me too.
and hand it on to people because this is an incredible deal and it's super important. Carrie put the link in there. I am repeating and putting the link in there too. Um, Such a great idea. Such a great idea. Thank you, Carrie, for bringing that forward. Um, So, Melissa, I know we've talked about really important things so far, and I know that you probably got a couple other topics you want to bring up, but I want to flash back to just a couple hours ago. You
Oh,
were
yeah.
on the Daily Whatever show this morning with me and Dana. Thank you, by the way, for doing that. You were absolutely fantastic, as you always are.
Thank
Um,
you.
and you broke some news. Like literally, I
I
think you
did.
broke news this morning. A golden calf has been erected on the National Mall, people. Melissa, tell everybody what you saw.
Right. So I was going live with you guys earlier and I saw a couple of guys unloading a package, a large package right on the National Mall, which I thought was unusual. Um, and so they pulled out what appeared to be a statue and I could start to see that it was gold underneath its wrappings. And I was thinking, oh my God, this is crazy. So it had its arm like this number. And I was like, "Oh, no.
Oh
It's
no.
not what I think it was." And it was not that. It was not that. But they unwrapped it and erected it, and it is a large golden statue of Trump, holding out a Bitcoin, and it is thanking Trump for bringing success to Bitcoin.
Absolutely crazy, right? And we talked about this that um Trump and his family have made somewhere between 2 and 5 billion with a B dollars of trading their own coin, and Melania has a
Right.
coin, and they've got all these shit coins basically that are being pumped and dumped, right? They are being
Right.
artificially inflated because all of his loyal MAGA followers go and invest.
Right.
And there literally it has been rug pull after rug pull. If you don't know what that is in the meme coin world, it's when somebody goes out and they artificially inflate the price of a coin by making everyone really excited about it, and then the people who founded the coin cash out,
Yep.
right? And so they pull the rug out from everybody else, and the coin plummets in value. And then if they're Trump, they do it over and over again. They keep pumping it up
Right.
and then rug pulling and then pumping it up and then rug pulling. And so they have raked in billions of dollars illegally. Like
Billions.
this is the Securities and Exchange Commission fraud thing. You know, if coins were truly regulated by the
Right.
SEC, and it's a total scam, and it's just enriching them because they care about nothing but money and themselves.
Right. And this is just one of the grifts. The coins that they have are just one of the grifts. I read somewhere that it's closer to 40 billion that the family has made since January between all the merch, because the president of the United States has merch now, between the merch and the other grifts, like the coins that they all have. So he apparently a Molman's clause and anything like that is just totally out the window.
Absolutely insane, right? Like, I, you know, my mind, I'm momentarily speechless because I'm just thinking about the thing that we keep saying over and over again in this age of Trump. If any other president had done this,
Anything close.
president or vice president or secretary of anything or congress member or anyone, they'd be impeached, they'd be voted out, they'd go to jail for
They
crimes.
made Jimmy Carter sell his little peanut farm.
Right, Jimmy fucking Carter, the kindest man, the most authentic Christian,
Right.
which coming from a Jack Jew like me is a compliment because I'm not particularly a fan of any organized religion, but like the
Right.
most authentically Christian person who ever lived, possibly after Christ, uh, had to sell his peanut farm, his family's peanut
His
farm,
little peanut farm.
his little tiny family peanut farm that he then couldn't pass down to his own children like it had been
Right.
passed down to him because it was such a conflict of interest, because the president has so much say over the peanut prices.
And he was forced to, but there was also an element of he said, "Okay, I'll do that because I want to be a servant to the people."
Right, like because Carter was such a good and honest man, he
Right.
did the emotional calculation and said, I want to be a paragon of virtue. I want to live up to my highest values, and I'm willing to sacrifice, you
Right.
know, so that I can serve my country in the best possible way. And
Right.
he did that. And, and what he got as thanks was the Reagan Revolution,
Right.
which, we could argue is the thing that put us on this trajectory towards Trump and the absolute cravenness that we're seeing in government right now. It's fucking disgusting how much about money making and, tying it all together. We can amend this thing. We can amend the Constitution. It's going to be fucking hard, but we can do it. And one of the
Yes.
amendments we should propose is nobody in government is allowed to trade stocks or cryptocurrency.
Exactly. It seems like such a no-brainer.
Such a no brainer. I think, I don't know the polling on it, but I would kind of bet that it's probably up there in the 80s or 90s in terms of like the broad based consensus. I think
Right.
Republicans, Democrats, Independents, and, whatever would probably agree. If you're in the government, if you're serving the government as an elected official or an appointed secretary or something, you got to put your stuff into a blind trust. You
Right.
can't actively trade stocks. You can't actively trade cryptocurrency.
Right.
Just put it into a blind trust. When you're out of government, take it out of the blind trust. If you did your job right, the economy grew under your administration, and
Exactly.
you're still good.
Right. That would be the no-brainer approach once again. Right. Yeah. It
Yeah,
just further emphasizes the divide between the people that are making these types of laws and decisions and the growing wealth disparity between them and the rest of us, and how this is a no-brainer to us, but apparently this isn't a no-brainer to the people at the top who are benefiting.
Right. Right. You know, the thing that excites me about the idea of trying to work towards an amendment for something like this is because it's almost certainly got such broad-based approval, we could go into Arkansas or Tennessee or Wyoming, right? And say, do you think that elected officials should be able to profit off of their government business? You know, everyone's going to say no, and
Yeah.
then you get people to sign it. Like we could organize people in Wyoming to do this, and you know, and I think it would be a great way to build the infrastructure for larger movement about what we need to do to take this country back and get it back on track. So that's the thing that, you know, that we at Banner and Backbone are going to be talking about again more in the future. We published an article recently about amending the Constitution, how it's built into the Constitution. It was
Yes.
considered an integral part. The whole reason the Constitution got adopted is because it had an amendment process. The Bill of Rights was the price that got paid by the Federalists to the Anti-Federalists to get the Constitution ratified. Um, you know, and Jill Lepore, who's a Harvard professor, has a book that just came out called "We the People." It's literally about amending the Constitution and how, because we have lost the ability, the belief that we can amend the Constitution, we're losing our democracy.
Yeah.
So this is a big push that I think we should make, and I know Melissa, you feel similarly, and so you know I'm excited that we get to work on that moving
Yes,
forward.
absolutely. Like we were talking about earlier, when I was on the Daily Whatever this morning, Thomas Jefferson, who is definitely problematic in a lot of ways, but in terms of political conception and science and other philosophy, he was a genius. I mean, he really was. And Thomas Jefferson believed that we should have a new constitution every 22 years, that we should, convene a constitutional congress every 22 years, so each generation makes their own constitution that would fit in their time. He is the one of the only forefathers that foresaw the issues that would come with a static document in a fluctuating society, and things that they could never predict. They never could have predicted people having access to something like a semi-automatic weapon. That just was not even in anything they could conceptualize. They couldn't conceptualize of even a society where women were equal to men. I mean, that alone. And so having a new constitution for every generation that is drafted and voted on and approved by representatives of that generation,
Yeah.
that was something that he kept advocating for. Obviously, he was on the losing end of that battle. But I really wish, of all the things that Thomas Jefferson did, that would be the one that would have sustained until today, because we are seeing in real time what happens when you have a 200-year-old document that is trying to navigate a modern ship.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You know, the Articles of Confederation, which was the first document that the country was run under for 8 years, was so inflexible it required unanimous consent between the 13 states to be amended, and it was so inflexible that it literally ruined the young country. Like people thought the U.S. was going to fail as an
Yeah.
entity. You know, 8 years in, 10 years after the war ended, people literally thought the United States was going to end. It was going to die. And that was why the framers in Philadelphia actually tossed out their original instructions, which was to fix the Articles of Confederation, and they just
Right.
wrote a whole new government. They created a whole new form of government. That included an amendment process. But the problem, you know, what Jill Lepore argues in her book is that they were trying to find a balance between being easily amendable, but not too easily amendable. And unfortunately, they over index towards difficulty. And so it's hard to amend the Constitution, but it isn't impossible. And that is the hope that we've got today, is that we can push for big changes. Obviously, we need to, you know, get Trump out of office. We need to, um, push back with urgency and nonviolently against the authoritarianism that is taking place in this country. But one of the tools that we've got is organizing around the idea of amending the Constitution.
Right.
So, it's a big push that we should make, and I'm excited to get that conversation going.
And that just
Um,
falls right in line with all the other nonviolent efforts.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, okay, I know we've only got about 13 minutes left. What else do you want to share with people?
Well, if you'll indulge me, I would like to read. You'll have an on air live reading of my pamphlet.
Yes,
All
let's
right.
do it. Let's
So
do
the
it.
only thing is, I'm going to turn my camera around because I feel weird just reading to a camera. So you guys will get a live shot of the Veterans Rally tent here in DC. And I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. This is Return to Common Sense, addressed to the inhabitants of the United States of America on the following subjects: liberty, empathy, and courage. Liberty. The word has inspired revolution again and again throughout human history. Innate in the human condition is the burning fire that resists bondage, captivity, and oppression. Our earliest settlers sailed on creaky wooden ships across hundreds of miles of open ocean, boldly into the unknown, fueled by the burning coals of liberty smoldering in the hearth of their heart and souls. And yet, even having endured oppression and hardship themselves, in our colonists' quest to grasp liberty, they snatched it from the hands of the people already inhabiting this land, the indigenous tribes who called this continent home for millennia. Instead of seeking to peacefully coexist, the colonists demanded dominion over all the land, its resources, and the people on it. If dominion wasn't accepted, we turned to violence. And yet there was a spark of this idea that began to grow and flame, even as its authors refused to extend the warmth of this idea to the native tribes or their African slaves or even their own wives and daughters. But from the smallest of seeds grow mighty trees, and so this seed took root here in this vast land. We began an experiment. Can humans find a way to progress through social division, ills and woes, ideological differences, socioeconomic inequality, and cultural disparity to afford each of the residents of our collective home a slice of liberty of their very own? We have tried. We threw tea in the harbor. We gathered militia and fought. We marched in the streets and we kept addressing societal inequalities in liberty one by one. The suffragettes marched to demand their slice of liberty in the form of the vote. Decades later, Black Americans would do the same. And as we have leveled up through these progressive stages of building liberty for all, we continue to pursue the definition of liberty to which we can all agree, to define the boundaries with increasing clarity. For example, you are free to practice your religion. You are not free to force others to practice your religion because those people are free to practice their religion. Your liberty ends where theirs begins. Where is that line? This seems to be a question we are still struggling to answer. Our earliest settlers did not come to America to escape the grasp of the church and religious persecution, as I myself had mistakenly believed for quite some time. Our earliest settlers came to America to establish dominion with the belief that they were ordained by God to take ownership over this land and submit to God's will with it. As Percy Winter writes in his article, Fascism at the Door, many came here as a people chosen to save the true faith based on true authority. So, what is the liberty that we choose to seek? Is it still merely a liberty that falls in line with a particularly narrow religious definition that serves only religion? Or is it liberty for all? The way we determine our definition of liberty as it answers that burning, timely question will determine how this democratic experiment will fare. Will the lamp of liberty burn brighter as each citizen holds aloft their own burning flame? Or will the light dim as the fire is reserved for a select few? I yearn for a bright America, each individual carrying forth their own bright torch of liberty. For a return to a darker time when millions were excluded from its warm glow may prove to be the action that snuffs the light entirely, and with it, the continuation of this American experiment. The conclusion will be failure. Empathy has never been a cornerstone of America's societal structures per se, but we have the potential to make it that way. The sign of a civilization that has progressed past barbarity is universal fostering, expression, and valuing of empathy. Looking back on the whole of human history, a significant landmark, the birth of what we consider civilization, is represented in a bone. Specifically, a human femur that was broken and then healed. A femur break requires weeks and sometimes months of rest to fully heal. This ancient skeleton with a healed femur proved that the people around that person experienced empathy and cared for them until the bone healed. They no longer just left someone behind to die like an animal. Empathy is literally the difference between us and madness, between us and the animal kingdom, us and feral chaos. The central key is empathy. If the demonization of empathy is a sign of the tearing of the very fabric of human civilization. We now know so much more about psychology and mental health than ever before. We know the importance of caring for one another. If anything, the internet made us intimately familiar with the private lives of other human beings all over the globe. We've gone along with strangers as they cook their dinner, take their evening commute, go on hikes, dance in their living room, go on vacation. We've seen more directly through our cell phones into other people's lives than ever possible in human history. I know that I have learned quite a bit from watching people globally on social media. And really, the biggest thing I've learned is that we all have a lot more in common than we thought. Once you see for yourself that you have so much more in common with the people you were told to hate or the people that you were told were so different, you realize that all humans are so similar. And it makes it, for me, more difficult to hate other people. I have sought with increasing desperation to understand the actions of some of my fellow Americans recently. If someone's skin is dark and their primary language is Spanish, why is it okay for them to be hurt, for their families to be torn apart, for them to be imprisoned, for them to be held in inhumane conditions, not just deported, but actually physically hurt, as joked about on graphic alligator Alcatraz t-shirts? How have we lost the primary thread of what it means to be human? I wouldn't wish this treatment on even those who harmed me as a small child. I suppose I thought, perhaps naively, that with the development of technology and an interconnectedness between us that we've never had before, this infusion of exposure to the intimacy of other people's lives would create more empathy, would make empathy flourish. I guess I'm rather confused how it seems to have made empathy decline. Of course, it does make perfect sense that if you are an oligarchy seeking to divide and control your population, demonizing empathy would be a prime way to do that. If growth and technology had caused the fostering of empathy, our society would be much more progressive and kind than it currently is. And certainly, from that, workers would have much better rights and wages than they currently do. So oligarchs benefit greatly from demonizing empathy and making citizens believe that being empathetic towards others is somehow weak, and even that those who display empathy are evil. It is, quite honestly, a masterful stroke of long range planning to disrupt the organic potential of technology to foster and increase empathy, but it has not experienced universal success across our land. Despite all attempts, many Americans still feel and express empathy for one another. Empathy is a natural enemy of both capitalism and fascism. The rights of the worker are rooted in empathy for human labor and life, and the inherent right to liberty is rooted in empathy for human well being, happiness, and personal satisfaction. We all desire to be compensated appropriately for our labor and to be treated with dignity in the course of that labor. And we all desire to be free to live as we please under the bounds of the universal rule of law. Simply put, do no harm. A corporation's bottom line has no cell in the Excel spreadsheet for empathy. A tyrant's rigid control holds no quarter for empathy for his subjects. And so the question becomes, do the American people recognize empathy as a necessary feature in the reprogramming of our nation's blueprints? And are they willing to demand it without exception? Courage, mental or moral strength to venture, persevere, and withstand danger, fear, or difficulty, as defined by Merriam-Webster. Americans have never had much lack of courage as we have boldly, sometimes foolishly, ran headlong into colonizing, war, and commerce. If it requires brute force and aggression, we can't go fast enough. But when a situation demands a more subtle moral courage, the courage to stand up for a friend or protect a vulnerable person, some Americans lose their bravado. Standing at this moment in our nation's history, with fractures growing throughout the democracy, aspects of our constitutional undergirding crumbling, we each find ourselves at a crossroads of moral divergence. It appears that one path leads to a dimming of the light of liberty by reducing the possession of its flame to a select few, a rejection of the foundational demand for empathy, and therefore admitted forfeiture in the great American experiment. It will be the end of the road for what we know as America. The other path leads to a universal brightening of the shared light of liberty and an insistence on empathy as a required ingredient in the melting pot that holds the future of America. This path is not an immediate proclamation of success in this grand experiment, but it does continue it. On this path, we will press together to keep learning, growing, and reaching for a more perfect union, striving onward together to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. This path demands a courage from Americans which may feel awkward and cumbersome, for it does not require loud bluster and bold aggression. It requires a moral courage rooted in humility, justice, empathy, and compassion, and a vision for the nation far greater than one's own interest. It demands moral fortitude to honor the promise of what America can be, a land where each individual possesses true freedom. Freedom from oppression from oligarchs, corporations, religion, and the particular brand of men who lust after unfettered power on the backs of a broken people. Will you allow America to become a broken people? Or will you step forward with courage, bearing the moral fortitude of a visionary leader who still believes in the potential of a land of free and equal people, each bearing a blazing torch of liberty? Here's my torch, friend. Step forward with me. We are America's hope and promise for a brighter tomorrow, and together we can chart a brilliant course.
Melissa, oh my God. Amazing. You like people are going nuts in the chat. It is so good. People want to be able to print copies of it to pass it out. I think you mentioned that you were potentially publishing it
I
on
do.
Counterstory Media.
It's on my website. It's on counterstorymedia.com/TNP for the new papers. And there is a password for that page that is White Rose.
White
All one word.
Rose.
White Rose.
Okay, hang on. I know we're right at time, but I'm going to go to Counterstory Media right now and I'm going to grab that link. Um, hang on, folks. I'm navigating while I am trying to talk, which, me brain, no good. So sometimes, all right, Counterstory Media, black.
Hold on. I think I'm going to drop let's see.
Okay. Sometimes. Oops. All right. I'm muting. I'm doing that. Backslash the new papers, TNP.
TNP.
And it says page not found.
Let's see. Counterstorymedia.com.
Oh, not the Substack Counterstory Media.
No, not the Substack, on my own website. So I have control of that shit.
Got it. Okay. Here we are. Let me see.
And I am
Blah, blah,
about to
blah.
move to a server in Iceland.
Nice. Okay. We need to talk about that because I am super curious. All right, I've got the URL. I'm putting it in the chat right now. So this is the URL, people, and then the password Melissa said is White Rose,
All
all
one
one word, all lowercase. Why write White Rose, Melissa?
The White Rose Society was founded by Sophie Scholl in the French Resistance during World War II. Sophie Scholl was a sweet little 21-year-old girl that was a student at university who wrote her own one-page pamphlet and distributed it on campus and around Paris. And she was shot in the street by Nazis for her effort.
Wow. God damn.
Yeah.
I love that you knew that and that you made it the password
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
to these papers. That is so impactful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Melissa. I honestly, all of your words were moving. They are so timely. Everybody should read this. So we've got the URL in the chat. You've got the password. Everybody, please go download that and share it with people. Print it out and hand it out. Yeah, it's resonating so hard, and I think
Good.
it's perfect for this moment.
Good.
Melissa, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. You honestly inspire me every time we speak because you're a busy mom of kids. You're a veteran and you're still doing a million things to try to save this democracy. If American democracy
Yes.
fails, it will not be because Melissa Corrigan didn't try her damnedest to make
That's
sure that
right.
it
That's
didn't.
right.
We're grateful for you and thanks for being here. Thank you for your service. Thank you for being in the nation's capital on Constitution Day and for doing this great work. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
you. All right, everybody. That's our show for today. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks again to Melissa. Everyone, have a great day and go buy or get free copies of the U.S. Constitution. Go download Melissa's new papers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
It's great.